Hey there, my name's Sebastian, and this is Talk That Pod, a podcast where I have conversations with some of the most interesting podcasters in the world. My guest today is Kurt Sasso. Kurt is the host of Two Geeks Talking, an entertainment interview show with well over 1,000 plus interviews across cultural categories such as TV, film, music, and video games. Kurt, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much, Sebastian. I really appreciate it. And I'm really excited to be here because your shorts have been popping up on my feeds there. And I'd be like, this has to be the show I have to be on. So thank you so much for this.
Of course. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. Okay, so you've described your podcast as sort of being in the spirit of inside the actor's studio. I'm curious what made you want to be sort of the geek world equivalent of James Lipton, and how did you decide, who and what subjects are sort of worth a deeper dive?
Well, like everything else, you kind of stumble into podcasting where you say the phrase, let's do a podcast. So that's kind of what happened with me and a very good friend of mine. He was creating a website called webcomics.com, and he was putting together a webcomics database for independent comic creators.
Cool.
Back in the 2000s, early 2000s. So I was like, okay, this is awesome. This is amazing. We should really get together and create a podcast. He goes, well, I'm busy with the website, so go ahead. So no knowledge of technology, no knowledge how to do a podcast, no knowledge how to host a podcast. Fast forward 18 years later, and I'm the sole host of the show, 1,200 plus interviews in the entertainment field. So for me, it came down to I wanted to give these introverted people a platform to share their stories and to talk about what they love doing. And sometimes I can channel James Lipton, and other times I channel Gary Vaynerchuk, or other times I'm sharing Tim Ferriss, or whatever the case may be. But for me, it's really about their stories and my connection with them, either enjoying what they're creating or just making sure that they can get their message out in a nice, clean, safe platform to the best of my editing abilities.
Before I get to some of my other questions about your podcast, I'm actually, now that we're talking, I'm realizing that perhaps we've had some overlap in the past, and I'm not really sure, but you've done interviews with webcomic artists, is that right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever interviewed the Explosum guys, the guys from Cyanide and Happiness?
Yes, I did one interview with Dave from Explosum back and the very first C2E2 in 2010 in Chicago.
Wow, okay. Have you ever talked to Tim Buckley, the guy that does the Control-Alt-Delete comic?
He's on my list to actually talk to.
Yeah, it's funny. So there is some overlap there. Many moons ago, back in 2003, a friend and I started a clothing store, an online clothing store for geeks and gamers. It was called Split Reason. And we actually did all the merchandise for both Control-Alt-Delete and Explosum at the time. So we had
that's awesome.
We had a merchandise deal with them. So yeah, that's a funny overlap there.
No, that's amazing because Control-Alt-Delete is one of my top 10 that I'm still trying to get an interview with, along with Penny Arcade.
Yeah.
But I've done things like I've done pretty much all of the godfathers of webcomics, from Brad Geiger to all of those guys there. So we could dive into that later. But no, that's amazing because I always loved the merchandise for Control-Alt-Delete and Cyanide and Happiness. They did some amazing work, and you guys did this amazing work too.
Yeah, seems like a lifetime ago now. Okay, so you've said that everyone has a story to tell. I think I saw you say that somewhere, and that it's sort of up to you to bring it out of the people that you interview. I'm new to interviewing. I'm trying to learn as I go. You've done a lot. Like you said, 1,200 interviews. I'm curious what your actual technique is for getting a guest that maybe is a little bit shy, a little bit reluctant to tell their story. How do you kind of get that best storytelling out of them?
Well, that's better than asking how do you pull teeth? I think it comes down to a couple of factors. Like if you have a good personality, even if you're a soft-spoken person as a host, as you are, it's all about the research that you do. It's all about just talking to them as people. Dive into what they're passionate about. Dive into what they're doing. Because if they're guesting on the show, everyone's going to be nervous. Heck, even I'm nervous doing this interview because I try to make sure I don't stutter. I try not to use any filler words, and that's just my own personal checklist. But talking to a guest, just treat them as people.
Yeah.
Try to dive into what they really love doing, and for the most part, that's also why I use open-ended questions, because it allows them to think about what they want to speak on. I know when I edit the show, it's going to actually be a tight edit, so I know that their message is going to be clear, and I know it's going to get whatever they're trying to say, whether they go off on 3 different tangents or not. It's going to get clear what exactly they're trying to say. So I think it just comes down to the reason why I say that tagline was because I kind of am an introverted person. I may not look like it right now because my battery is fully charged, but I think that it took me 60 some odd episodes of my own show to understand, how do you actually talk to people?
Yeah.
How do you interview people? How do you want to ask the questions instead of asking the boilerplate questions that you could then find online before AI came into the picture? And I'm sure we're going to dive into that later. But I think that it comes down to trying to get them to tell their story in their own words and guiding them to be able to tell that story is why I say my tagline as I have for the past 1,200 plus interviews.
Interesting. Well, you mentioned research there, and I've noticed that is something that your guests sort of praise you for, is, how much research you do prior to the interview. I'm curious about your process. Walk me through your preparation process, and how long does it usually take? What kind of tools do you use for research?
I think for me, it comes down to, do I have a connection with them or not? And there's 2 different trains of thought for how I research a person. My initial research, say this is the first time on my show, I'm going to look through your socials. I'm going to look through your website. I'm going to look through whatever we're going to be talking about, whether it's a comic, whether you're in a TV show, film, etc. My other categories that I talk about there, because even sometimes I forget. And I want to see how you are as a person. How do you interact with your fans? How do you interact with the people that are making comments to your content? Then I dive even deeper. Have you done any interviews in the past? So I'm going to make sure that I don't ask the same questions that these guests or these hosts ask them, because you don't want to retread old questions, unless it's a good question. Then I say, okay, bring it back just to see what they say in the past 5 years. So have they changed in their lifetime, in their creativity, things like that. And I think it comes back to, besides my own personal research, have I interacted with them before? Say they've been on a guest more than once, and I've had guests on the show between 8 and 13 times in the past 18 years. Not quite. There's 3 people that kind of currently hold the top 3 spot for guests on my show. So thanks, Dirk, thanks, Trevor, and thanks, Madeline Holly Rosing, for being amazing guests over the past 18 years. But if they've been on the show multiple times, I'm not going to ask them the same questions. I'm not going to dive into the same questions I would ask a new person. So that's a change of research, a change of thought process. What have I asked them in the past? Because I have a list of questions I've asked past guests. And now I'm going to look at a more conversational interview. I'm going to dive into their creative process still, or I'm going to dive into maybe they got a new artist, or maybe they're using social media in a different way. I'm going to go, as I call it, the more Tim Ferriss and Gary Vaynerchuk style of interview.
Yeah.
Where you look at the creative process, you look at their productivity hacks, you look at their abilities to engage with their audience, especially with how fast social media is and with everything along that line. So it's more of a, what can I gain from them being on the show in terms of how can I improve my own show and my own process? And how can they share their knowledge with potential long-term listeners of the show or watching through YouTube? So a bit of a broad spectrum in terms of how I talk with people. But if they can provide a couple of nuggets of valuable information that has helped them throughout their day improve in some way, shape, or form, then I think that's valuable, no matter if it's the first time or if it's their final time on the show.
Yeah. And going back to what you said earlier about how it took you about 60 episodes to get to the point where you felt like, okay, my interview skills are getting better, sort of getting to a point where I like. When you look back at some of those earliest interviews, are there things that make you kind of cringe and look at them and go, wow, those were some lessons learned? And, does looking back at those mistakes kind of still guide you the way you interview today?
Well, I still hate the way I sound.
Nobody likes the sound of their own voice, do they?
It's ironic, like, especially as hosts, we have to edit this stuff afterwards. So we have to listen to ourselves over and over and over again.
I really had to get over that hump. With the first few episodes, I was like, oh my God, I cannot stand hearing the sound of my own voice. But you know what? I've gotten used to it. I don't know if that happens for everybody too, or every podcaster that winds up having to listen to themselves, like you said, over and over again. But it took a few episodes where I stopped kind of like having this weird visceral reaction to like, oh, what? I sound like that? Jesus.
Oh, yes. So for me, it came down to the reason why the guests speak 90% of the time and I speak only 10% of the time is because, one, the guest is the focus of the interview. It's not me as the host. That's kind of the guideline I set for myself as a host of the show. Secondly, if I mess up on my questions, I tightly edit my own self too. So it's not like I give any dead air or fillers. Back to learning about the history of my own process there. Going back in 2008 when we started, we were doing 2-hour plus live call-in sessions with our guests. So through talkshoe.com, we were literally having them call in and people could listen to it live and people would call in with their questions. And it was a huge process. And so I learned a couple of things about that, which was, one, I didn't have time to edit it, so I let it all go raw.
Sure.
So there are at least 1,000 interviews or 800 plus interviews that are just awful, in my opinion. Horrible audio quality. I learned how to use technology properly. I learned how to use social media a lot better. I learned how to ask questions. I learned how to work with a host at the time. He was the host, I was the co-host, and understand how to play off of other people rather than just being a single person. By episode 61, when I had to become the host of the show, I had to kind of shift my mindscape. I didn't have anyone to fall back on, so I had to focus on what exactly I needed to do. How do I become a good host? How do I ask questions? How do I ask the questions I want to ask the guest? Can I learn something from them in some way, shape, or form? And that process, and that was like year 4 of the show on, I started getting my own voice. I started learning how I sounded as a host, how I wanted to sound as a host, how I wanted to ask questions of my guests. And I wanted to be able to provide value in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if I have over the years. I guess I have. I'm still here. But like I said, it's always been about my guests. So I learned that technology is ever changing. I learned that you can always improve your video quality in your cameras, but if your audio is horrible, then it doesn't matter how you look, but it always matters how you sound. So that's what I took when I switched to video as well. Always have good audio, always have a good camera, and always have good lighting, and make sure that you're clear and your guest is clear, and everything else will work out in the end.
Makes a difference for sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious also, you've done so many interviews, you've talked to so many people. Over that span, has any of that sort of networking with the people that you interview led to any work opportunities, any business opportunities, anything like that?
I think it has, in a way, whether I'm conscious of it or not. By year 5, I was getting a lot of I was getting references from other people saying, "Hey, you should be on this show," which is a great thing to have as a podcast host, as a host for a show. Referrals are wonderful to have, especially if the guests you had really took a liking to your style of interview, really took a liking to your process, really took a liking to your final edit of the show itself, if you decide to edit. For me, I do edit because I like to keep it tight, hour or less. That's beside the point. Has that given me job opportunities? Possibly. I don't really know. I know that I've gotten guests that I didn't think I would get.
Right.
Just because I reached out and asked and said I had this person who happens to be an acquaintance of yours on the show and they enjoyed the process. So subconsciously, maybe that was a connection that I didn't realize. And now that you asked the question, I'm actively thinking of it now. So that's good. Thank you for that. I think that still doing my own personal reach out, stating that I have this experience of 18 years of 1,200 plus interviews, who I've interviewed, whether they're in your field as an author, comic creator, et cetera, in those other industries, has given me a little credit to talk with these other people. I've had a lot of PR people come to me, not just simply saying, hey, can you interview our guest, but they remember I've interviewed their past other top guests. And so they keep bringing me other people to interview. So maybe that's a testament to my connections with people in that particular process.
Yeah.
I think that it just comes to the trial and error of being a host. It comes down to being able to actively keep yourself on top of your own game, whether you're researching new questions or reaching out to people. I think is a factor that a lot of hosts don't do enough of, whether it's through your newsletter, whether it's through social media, whether it's through reaching out to their gatekeepers, whether they're PR reps or their actual managers. The worst thing that they can say is no. So it's not like there aren't 8 billion other people that you can reach out to, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So keep trying.
Yeah. You've had a variety of guests on the show, as we said at the top of the show. You've interviewed comic creators, filmmakers, musicians, game developers. Are there any common personality traits that you've noticed among them that you think maybe contribute to the fact that they've successfully built creative careers?
I think there's two factors that have made these people successful. Their ability to keep pushing forward with perseverance, with determination, with spite in some cases, with luck in others, with their connections they built up over their own professional careers. I think that they're always striving to do better in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a particular process in writing or in art. I think that embracing technology as they have, but stepping back from others like AI, if it damages their profession and stating as such, that they stand by their morals and they stand by their ground as a professional trying to make it in this world. So drive and determination is always a huge factor. The business side as well too. How do you become successful in your business as a comic creator? It's extremely difficult. Same as a musician, same as a TV actor or actress, same as a video game developer. You have to keep striving and pushing forward towards this passion because you don't think of it as a passion. You think of it as a goal. You think of it as your drive to become a successful business person. And I think that's what I love talking about these people. Why I dive deep into the Tim Ferriss and Gary Vaynerchuk style of the process is because they are doing this because they are so ingrained in what they're doing. It's just like, what can I gain from that in some way, shape, or form? How can people listening or watching to the show gain just a tidbit of that information, whether they use it or not in their present day, or maybe it's in their future? They'll think back on this and they'll actively, remember, oh yeah, I remember that interview with so-and-so and they had this really cool process. What was that again? Oh, I'm going to go back and watch this. And that's why I love the show, is because the evergreen content.
Yeah.
Like a guest I have 5 years ago could spark someone that's currently doing the same thing now. And I don't even know about it. I won't know about it.
Yeah.
But if it helps them, it helps them. And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. And I've also found that a lot of podcasters that do produce evergreen content, that sort of long tail, can really help their show grow, right? Because it's just sort of a built-in discovery mechanism, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to switch gears and talk a little bit more about promoting your podcast and what you've done sort of on the marketing side to grow your show. Was there a specific moment where you felt like the show really started to take off? And is there something that you can kind of attribute that to?
Well, as you know, podcasting and running a show, everyone starts it off as a hobby. It is what it is. You are looking for guests. You're looking for free promotion. You're looking to get your name out there. So you're basically taking anyone and everyone to be on your show. And if you don't focus on what your show is about specifically, while the initial show was about webcomic creators, I eventually branched out into the entertainment industry because you go to Comic-Cons, there's so many different avenues to talk to, so many people to talk to in so many different fields. So why narrow yourself down to a very certain field like webcomics? So in terms of how did I move from hobby to making this serious profession, for the first 15 years, I did this show for free.
Right.
I had spots open on Saturdays and Sundays, 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And everyone was using these free slots to promote themselves.
Right.
And I think that's wonderful. And there will always be a free slot available on Two Geeks Talking. But I can't live on exposure.
Right.
I have bills. And I've been fortunate enough to have jobs where I've been able to fund this wonderful show, Two Geeks Talking.
Sure.
That changed 3 years ago. So I don't have a job. I don't have an active profession currently in terms of a 9 to 5. I'm a freelancer. I also am fortunate enough to work in the TV and film industry. But as you know, those productions can be few and far between. So I have to gain money somehow. And so I provide a service and a paid interview service for Two Geeks Talking. As soon as I got my first client and first guest on the show that was willing to pay for an interview, that's a success in my opinion. Because now you know the quality you're putting out provides value in some way, shape, or form, whether it's production value, whether it's custom graphics that I design, short form content creation based on the long form that we do, my tight editing, my background as an editor as well in the TV and film industry, my background as a host before I was even in the TV and film industry. I think there's a lot people can gain from being on the show as a paid guest. And so that was the specific moment because one, I needed to survive. And you'll do anything to survive, basically, right?
Yeah. When you pitch the paid guests service, what do you tell potential clients? How do you rope them in? How do you say, okay, this is the value you'll be getting out of this?
You have to be straight with them. You lay it out. This is what I am providing, and I provide that in the contract and the receipt when they pay for a service. But I lay it out there. I go, you have X number of dates available this month from Sunday to Saturday from 9 a.m. till 11 p.m. at night. My calendar is open to you. So you pick whatever works best for your schedule, no matter what it is, whether you're in the Philippines, 12 hours away, I will make it work.
Right.
So that's half of the battle right there. But the other half is, what else can I provide? Because everyone can do an interview. That's not the issue. What else can I provide as a service to benefit you what problem can I solve is what I'm trying to say. What problem can Two Geeks Talking paid interview services solve for you? And for me, I found out that I really love creating short reels based off of my long form content. And that's the Gary Vaynerchuk triangle method of taking and reusing your content.
Right.
You take your long form content, you break it down into smaller bits, and you post it out to social media. Why can't I do the same thing for my content? So I did. And it became very, very successful. I have different services, I have different modes, but it's still always about the guest. Whether you're paying or not, my focus has never changed. It's still about you as the guest, you selling whatever you're trying to sell, you trying to promote what you're trying to promote, and my platform being available to you, whether it's free or paid. And I think it's a great working relationship because I really enjoy the guests that come on the show. And I'm so fortunate to have people that come on the show here that want to speak about what they're passionate about. And I'll keep doing it until either, the internet explodes or, I decide to retire whenever that may be.
Sure. Okay. You're in it for the long haul.
Yeah. 18 years is technically the long haul.
Yeah, you're definitely a long-lived podcaster. A lot of podcasters don't make it past the first month, right?
That's true. Or episode 10.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so when you look at the whole arc of your podcast, can you sort of point to one or two specific growth strategies that kind of produce the best results?
I think when I switched to video was the very first one.
Okay.
So 2010 was the very first time I switched to video. And how that came about was by 2010, that's 2 years into the show, I had already interviewed over 800 webcomic creators. I was getting burnt out with webcomic creators. Sure. Nothing against them, but once you kind of run the well dry, you need a fresh change. So a comic artist friend of mine had started his own collective of comic creators in Chicago. And so he invited me out to Chicago. I went to the very first C2E2, and I had interviewed about 500 people there, basically.
Wow.
I was on my feet for 4 days straight. It's also how I learned to wear comfortable shoes, because as much as dress shoes look amazing, they are horrible on cement. So, and that's beside the point. So switching to video was the very first kind of step up in my creative journey to, I think, professionalism. Because I was against major news medias. I was against CBS, NBC, whatever other media outlets were out there. And I'm just a guy with a camcorder and a little Sony handheld recorder.
Yeah.
I don't have the professional equipment, but my drive and my focus is to get as many interviews as possible in the shortest amount of time possible, because I don't want to take away from their business.
Yeah.
So that was one of the key factors. And once I got the YouTube channel up, once I got the social media handles kind of locked down for the show itself, it was about posting out this content and getting connections and building an audience on a social media platform, and not inundate them with, hey, watch my show, listen to my channel, make actual connections through social media. And that was kind of that second stage as well, to make sure that I'm not just talking at you to try to push the show. I want to know what you're about, what you'd like to do as a profession or as an indie creator. And you like baseball, or you like, Pokemon, or you like video games. Oh, I love that too. Let's make that connection. Oh, you're also creating a comic? Oh, I've got to get you on the show. Let's have a talk. Let's have a conversation. Let's really, it's not pitching. It's just, I'm actually genuinely interested in what you're trying to create. And so that was kind of the next stage. And I think the third stage would be, once you reach year 5, year 10, year 15, how do you keep it fresh?
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of graphics you have had to create. That's a lot of descriptions and show notes and keywords and sharing on social media platforms. And another social media platform has just come up. How do you share to that? I got to create another account. I have to build up my audience once more.
Yeah.
And on and on and on. And how do you not burn yourself out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really admire that longevity. It's been my experience in my life, at least, that whenever I've spoken or ran across people that were extremely successful in one way or another, it's because they've been doing the thing that they've been doing for a very long time. And it's the old sort of, 20 years in the making overnight success. I think that's a lot more common than people think. And I think a lot of podcast creators would be smart to think about their shows that way. It's also very interesting to me that you were to video so early. I mean, 2010, like there were no video podcasts, if any, right? There were maybe a few. No. So I'm curious there, now that we're, in 2026 here, there's a huge push by sort of the podcasting world into video now. And I mean, a big part of it is because they're trying to sort of run with the herd, but also because they realize that a lot of these platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, it's short form video, and it serves as a great discovery mechanism. That said, there's the added burden of producing video, right? It takes a lot more to edit video than does just audio. And I really find that interesting because, the technical barriers to video have dropped, right? You're right. In 2010, it was harder to sort of figure out what equipment do I need? What kind of lighting do I need? now, anybody with an iPhone can do video, right? Now, some do it better than others, obviously. Some sort of put more effort into the professionalism of how their video's set up. But yeah, I'm curious what you think about that sort of recent push to video in the podcast industry, because there's some opposing opinions. Some people think that podcasts should remain purely audio, that it's a medium designed for that intimacy, but clearly the industry's heading the other way.
No, I don't think so. I think they go hand in hand. I honestly think it goes hand in hand. And I have two trains of thought on this. When I first started in 2008, I learned about podcasting through Podcast Answer Man, Cliff Ravenscraft. That's how I learned how to podcast. I went to his website. I was watching I was reading his articles. I was learning all about that stuff there. And so that's how I got TalkShoe. And that's how I learned that audio quality is really key, because TalkShoe only has 64 hertz audio, 96 at best if their servers weren't overloaded. And so that's how I learned that audio was truly impressive, and better quality microphones and things like that. And so no matter where you start, like I said, the barrier for technology is a lot easier to get into now. So the quality of microphones is better. The quality of cameras is better. The lighting is way better. But you're still putting the same content out. So why not do video as well as audio at the same time?
Sure.
When I produce a show, yes, it's for YouTube, but I'm editing for audio. So I'm not going to double the amount of work just to do a podcast. Right. I mean, that's kind of silly if you do that. So you get the question, is a video podcast a podcast? Well, it's a show with an audio component. That's how I'd like to say Two Geeks Talking is.
Yeah.
And there's no clear distinction. Can you do both? Yes. Is it a lot of work? Heck, yes, it is. Are you still going to take time to edit the videos and break it down into short form content? Well, you have to, especially with TikTok and everything like that.
Yeah.
Are you doing 5 times the amounts of work for the same single show? Yes, but the long-term goals of that extra work you're doing in the initial stages will benefit you in the long run, because then people will start linking your short content to your long-form content. So the discourse between podcasting and video podcasting, they're all one and the same. It's just what you choose to do with it. Do you want to be an audio-only podcaster? Awesome, great, do it. And then when you decide to break into video, awesome, great, do it. Nothing's going to change. Your process is still going to be the same. You're just going to have to now look better on camera.
That's right. Well, and a lot of podcasters don't want to, right? They just don't want to be on camera in the first place.
100%.
I'm going to play a hypothetical for you. Imagine that you never launched your podcast, but you want to launch it today. Two Geeks Talking from scratch in 2026 with 0 listeners. Knowing sort of what you know based on your experience, based on how you see other podcasts that launch successfully, what would your first sort of, 60 to 90 days look like in terms of the activities that you would engage in to get the word out?
I think first off, I would lock down the name. Lock down your brand. You have to. Like if someone has your name, and I've noticed this a lot with Two Geeks Talking, where people have done Two Geeks Talking with the number 2, or they've done other variations of my verbiage. And it's like, I can't send them a cease and desist, but as much as I'd like to, but
yeah,
I haven't copyrighted the name just yet. I'm working on that. Anyhow, starting in the first 60 to 90 days with 0 listeners, locking down the brand name is the first thing. Locking down all the social medias, making sure that this is the absolute niche I want to do, the absolute passion I want to do, especially from an interview standpoint. If I were to say focus on a specific topic, like, I don't know, trading cards or whatever the case is, same thing. I would lock down the brand, but I would start looking at the industry maybe from a business side of things, or maybe I want to do a review side of things for quality of cards, or maybe I want to research a little more into what exactly I'm getting myself into. Are there similar channels that I can focus in on and maybe learn from as well to model my show around. So that would be another part of my first 60 to 90 days.
Mhm.
Another stage would be you have to record. You might as well set up your video show and start recording episodes. Whether you release them or not, that's up to you. But I would have a bit of a backlog.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do topical content like news of the day type thing, you're kind of pigeonholing yourself because now you're forced to do that every single day.
Mhm.
But if you're looking at trends, or if you're looking at projections, or if you're interviewing people specifically, gather them up, get yourself at least 1 to 2 months worth of content so that you can schedule, post them, and release them out. And now you have a buffer. Now you have flexibility.
Yeah.
Now you're not burning yourself
That's
out
right.
in the first 60 to 90 days because, oh my gosh, you can easily do that so quickly.
Mhm.
And you won't notice it. And then you'll wonder, why isn't this fun anymore? Why don't I enjoy doing this? Why is no one paying attention to what I'm doing? And you get discouraged.
Yeah.
And it's hard to deal with. And you can only do so much with that. And then you get depressed and then you stop doing it. And now you're into the wall of, well, I've hit episode 10 and I just don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And then you take your ball and go home.
Yeah. I think that's really great advice. I think a lot of podcasters that do find success through consistency, they do employ some of these methods. They definitely do batch recordings because, yes, it can be a path to burnout, like you said, and it's, whatever cadence you've set for your podcast, whether it's, daily, weekly, whatever, it can be a grind. And so doing some of that batching, never mind the fact that, hey, what if you're sick 1 week or what if you're sick for 2 weeks, right? You want to have enough content sitting in your back pocket that you're not stressing about the release schedule because the content's there. You've done it. You've made it. You don't have to worry about it.
That first 60 to 90 days is really critical for yourself as a host because not just the business side of things, not just the social media side of things, but you're finding your voice in those first 60 to 90 days as well, too. Maybe you try one style and it works great with one guest, but it doesn't work with another. Yeah. You got to pivot. You got to actually figure out, well, how you got to find your voice is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can do that, then that's great, but you're always going to tweak it. You're not going to use the same questions every day. You're not going to use the same questions for every guest. Like I've done, I've switched it up with multiple repeat guests on the show. And it's improved myself as a host, but it's also improved my ability to speak with people and not be locked down to certain questions or not be locked down to a certain process, cadence or not. And you find your own flow and your own rhythm. And if you can do that, year one is going to be easy for you. You're locked in for year two and you're now pre-scheduling guests on the show. And you're saying, okay, well, my guest list is now filling up. You got to book ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that's another wonderful thing to have as well, too. I'm booked until, I think early July at this point currently, but I will take my time and make sure that everyone that wants to be on a guest on the show can be a guest on the show. So,
yeah, that's incredible. Now, like any good podcaster, you probably pay attention to your analytics. I know I do. Is there a metric or an analytic that you care most about? Is it downloads, subscriber growth, engagement, maybe guest feedback, or is there something else that you care the most about?
Guest feedback is nice, but it's not a metric I rely on because I only get few and far between. I get their appreciation at the end of the interview, which is wonderful, and I will always reach out to them, especially if I need a guest in the future, and keep in touch with them because that just makes you a good person, not just a host. It makes you a good person. Yeah. It's amazing what you can do with the simple matter of, hey, how's your day going? Back in 2012, when the podcast stopped, only because of time, but I switched full-time to YouTube, the show had over 750,000 downloads from 2008 to 2012. By 2016, the podcast apparently was deleted by TalkShoe. So I lost that archive on TalkShoe specifically. I still have 20 years in IT, you back up everything. Yeah. So I made sure I have. So downloads I don't really care about. Most recently, as of I think January of this year, I just reached 720,000 views on YouTube. So I think that's wonderful for a long format content show. I'm not a Mr. Beast. I'll take all the views I can get. So downloads don't really pay attention too much. It's great to see. I love it, but not a real factor. The real factor I pay attention to, and this is probably why I'm still not monetized, is because I care about the guests. I care about the people.
Yeah.
That's all. I mean, it's maybe silly, but they're our bread and butter in terms of free or paid. But they're also talented people that want to share their stories and they want to get their self out there because maybe they're social media, or maybe they're not active on social media, or maybe they're so introverted that it's like pulling teeth because they just don't know how to communicate.
Yeah.
It's happened 5 times, by the way, in 18 years for me. So,
wow.
But you get past that.
Yeah.
And you make sure that the final product you release benefits them in every way, shape, or form, no matter what the case may be. So yes, downloads are great. Subscriptions are amazing. Engagement is always welcome. So please like and subscribe and go to the YouTube channel because my website's going through a revamp. All those wonderful keywords. But I think if you can get guests' feedback saying they loved this and this and this about the show, or they didn't realize that I was going to ask a certain question and it made them actually think, I think that makes me smile. That makes me think that, warm and fuzzies, and makes me good, that I actually have done something to maybe brighten their day or make them think in some way, shape, or form.
That's a wonderful way to think about it, for sure. Is there a piece of podcasting advice that you see floating around, whether it's related to promotion or production, that gets sort of repeated constantly by, the sort of podcast literati, but it doesn't really work anymore? Because I have personally found that there are a number of things that are repeated often. So I find some of the advice given to podcasters, especially on the marketing side, to be like questionable. Is there anything like that you've found as well?
No. You've opened the door here. You have to give me your top 3 in this case.
Okay, well, one of the first things that I find kind of interesting that is still repeated over and over again is the idea that just make good content. Don't worry about anything else. It'll take care of itself. Don't worry. Make great content. Make a great podcast. So yes, that's great advice in the sense that, you should begin with that as your base, as the very lowest of the low bar to clear, is make something people want to listen to. I mean, it's obvious. Well, otherwise, why are you making a podcast? Are you making it to share with your 5 closest friends? You know what? That's okay too. But then that's not really good advice to heed if you're actually trying to grow your show. Another one that I see often is around podcast SEO, especially as it relates to how people optimize, their titles, their episode titles, their descriptions, show notes, and all that. There's all kinds of bad advice in there as well. What's the third one? I think a lot of podcasters still haven't embraced, and I know that this is sort of counter to the idea of, well, a lot of podcasters are doing this part-time. A lot of them are doing it as a hobby. But again, if they're invested in trying to grow their show, they need to take it seriously in the sense that this is a content operation. You are competing for attention, and that attention is scarce. Yes. You're not just competing with other podcasters. You're competing with Netflix. You're competing with Hulu. You're competing with Disney. You are competing for attention, period.
Yeah.
How are you going to get that attention? There's the easy ways. There's being controversial. There's being, flagrant. There's being obnoxious. There's spreading misinformation, sort of pandering to people's lowest sort of base instincts. Yeah, sure. Yeah. You can go that way. And a lot of people have. And I don't know how they feel about themselves at the end of the day and how they sleep at night, but hey. But, nowadays, you have to go where your audience is. And a lot of podcasters, I think, are still hesitant to do that. And I don't see that advice being given very much. Let's say I had a conversation with James Cridland of Pod News, and that is one of the things that he pointed out as well, is like, even if you have the most obscure podcast imaginable, underwater knitting. Okay, that thing doesn't really exist, but let's say it did. It was obscure. You go where the underwater knitting people hang out, and you become the well-known source in those places, those communities, wherever they are. And I feel like a lot of podcasters would benefit from that.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, and I've seen a few that are really taking the lead to get podcasters to become paid as part of their network and things like that. And I think we didn't have that back then, so I think that's a wonderful avenue, especially if you're looking for guests and things along that line. And it's a true networking business, is what I'm going to say for podcasts specifically. Alex is the guy that runs that one specifically. I can't think of his last name, Serafino or something like that. So for me, I think bad advice given not only for podcasting but for YouTube as well too, because they're one and the same. At least for what I have to deal with, is keywords don't matter, hashtags don't matter, titles don't matter. Your descriptions are too long, your descriptions are too short. No one's going to look through your chapters, and yet now YouTube is pushing chapter breaks because they want their AI to run through those chapters to feed other people. There's a whole algorithm with that as well too. The whole making a good show. Yes, everyone can make a good show, but do you want to know what exactly, or you want to know how that actually happens? It's because people still say, let's make a podcast. And it's because it's such back and forth, and it's become cyclical. And it's like, sure, you can make a podcast, but have you researched what you want to do? Have you done everything like that, as we previously talked about? And for the most part, they just want to get two people to talk on camera. Or they want two people on a show, and they just think, if I create it, it'll get noticed and we'll get picked up and we'll get money. And, they don't put the work into it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part about being a host or being a podcaster is, if you don't put in the work, you're not going to get the results. So you have to do that. Other bad advice that I think I've been given is, besides all of the typical SEO people that look at your channel saying, I can do this and provide you with service and blah, blah, blah. People get sucked in with those types of grifters, and they wonder why their show isn't growing.
Right.
And they've spent all this money, and they get disillusioned with the fact. And I can say that I got taken advantage of it in my early days of that too. I thought the person was being genuine, and they took $100 off me and then did nothing with it. And at the time, that was a lot of money. Sure. So still is, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so you lose trust in people. You lose trust in the institution you're trying to build. And so you close yourself off.
Yeah.
And you just start doing things alone, and you start marketing alone, and you start promoting alone, and you start asking for guests alone. And you stop trusting people and stop trusting the process. And you think this is how you stop working as a host. And you just say, I just want to get an episode done. And then you start getting burnout, and you start doing everything like that. So
I want to switch topics again and talk a little bit about how you view podcasts sort of in our modern discourse. We touched on this at the top of the show about the idea that everybody's competing for these sort of shorter attention spans with, a lot of these short form platforms. And yet, long form podcasting has really exploded in terms of popularity, where people will gladly listen to 2-3 hour conversations. Why do you think that modern audiences crave these kinds of shows, these sort of deep dive, whether they're interview shows or they're narrative shows, when the rest of the internet is trying to sort of feed them, 5-second, 10-second videos?
Well, the funny thing about what you just said is this is all cyclical. I've seen this. This isn't anything new. People will say it's new. People will say, oh yeah, the long form content is really taking off. It was like that in the early 2000s. Right. Sorry. But it's all good for the creators. It's all good for the hosts. It's all good for their listeners. So it's not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. Why people listen to long form content though is because they just want to space out for a couple of hours, whether they're at the gym. Well, no, it's true. Look, I interviewed a couple of comic creators that are long distance runners, 26-mile runners. I go, so what do you listen to? Do you listen to like, music or anything of that? You must have amazing playlists. They're like, no, listen to podcasts. I'm learning about cooking from such and such a chef. And the other guy was listening to true crime podcast as he's running 26 miles. So he's either going to change professions or is just something to pass the time. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I didn't ask. I was scared. Anyhow. But I think because people are fighting for attention spans, we have two trains of people. We have an older generation that's locked into long form content, which means they're focused on a specific task and they just want background noise. And then you have the younger generation that have grown up on TikTok, grown up on short reels, and grown up on all of this short form content because that's just the way they're currently wired. And maybe they'll appreciate long form content in the future. But as of right now, we're at the whims of an algorithm and we're at the whims of the people that want their eyes on our content. So as a host, as a creator, you're going to have to create both.
Yeah.
Sorry to say that. I'm sorry to give you a couple more hours of extra work there, but I really think that you keep enjoying what you enjoy, and you'll find what you're looking for in a podcast, I'm sure. So enjoy that 2-hour podcast of how you can make flambés or whatever not fall apart when you open up a door, or
Sure.
or Northern Canadian historical facts of why moose are basically the next nature's next animals over the cobra chickens that we have. So,
Yeah. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons I find podcasting so interesting, because people really do consume them in various modalities. They consume them while they're sitting and working. They consume them while they're doing the laundry. They consume them, as you said, while they're out running a marathon. It's amazing because it really feels like they consume them even differently when they are doing some of these different activities. Sometimes it's very active listening. Sometimes it's extremely passive. Hell, there is an entire cottage industry of podcasts that are designed for you to fall asleep to. They literally call themselves that. So anyway, I find that interesting. But I wanted to ask you about the fact that, we had the 2024 election in the US, and it was sort of widely considered, or at least called by some media, as the podcast election. It's clearly now, an industry that can shape politics and culture and how people get their news. As someone that's been doing it for a long time and has sort of observed that arc, does that sort of evolution excite you or kind of worry you?
I mean, if you look at technology and how it's advanced civilizations, if you go back as far as from smoke signals to Morse code to radio to television to the internet to internet/podcasting /YouTube/ the power of the internet in the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
It depends on how you take the information that you're given.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a critical thinker? Are you one that thinks through the questions that are asked? Or are you a follower of the masses? It depends on what side of that fence you're currently on. It scares me because technology is advanced so fast, especially being in the industry of IT as I was for 20 years. It's advanced leaps and bounds over what I was used to using and creating with and things like that. But you're going to get a lot of people that are either going to be for or against whatever message is being said. Marshall McLuhan was the leader in communication, media, and film for "the medium is the message" is his famous catchphrase. And even back then, in the 60s and 70s, the message is always changing to fit the narrative of whoever is speaking it. So with this technology advancement, with the AI, with people not actively thinking clearly, or maybe they are thinking clearly and they're not jobs. Anyhow, I really think that you have to be very aware of how you consume media. So be careful out there.
And I think that's a good segue into my next question, which is around AI. I think I saw one of your recent guests talk about how AI is probably eroding things like critical thinking and potentially reducing creativity. And that's interesting words coming from someone that is a creative themselves. I'm wondering how you think about that. First of all, do you agree with it? And second of all, as an interviewer, somebody that does these long form podcasts, do you use AI yourself in at least the research process? How does that work for you?
So I'll answer the first question first. So you're quoting off of a more recent interview I had with L.A. Lockhart, who is an 80-year-old author who just wrote her first book at the age of 80.
Incredible.
Right, a murder mystery of all
Amazing.
things. A wonderful person to speak with as well too. But we had a brief conversation about AI and the erosion of critical thinking, as she mentioned during that interview. And I do think it is reducing creativity because it is actively sucking up the creativity that's already been fed into it without consent of various writers and artists and creators, whether they're dead or alive.
Yeah.
And that's music, that's art, that's everything. And the reason why it's doing that is because once you take away the art, you take away the ability to express yourself as a creative person. You're just spewing out the masses. Andy Warhol was a fighter against the consumerism of art and the consumerism of the medium and the message. You have more modern artists nowadays that are actively fighting against AI. You have all of these comics that you post on Facebook and things like that are AI generated, are done by actual creators that have put their blood, sweat, and tears into the art.
Yeah.
And the only reason why people are mass consuming it as they are is because they don't actually want to pay for things. And that's common no matter what era or decade you're in. And it is reducing the creativity because if you could just simply become a prompter, because I'm not going to call you an artist, I'm not going to call you a writer. If you are a prompter and you just create this work, I have no hope for you in the future.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Quite literally. You're not a creative person in any way, shape, or form. I went back to art school and communication media film at 33.
Wow.
I had to draw color wheels. And I had been in the IT industry for 20 plus years. I had to actively use my brain to think, how do I mix colors?
Yeah.
And I hadn't done that since 8 years old. Can't do that with AI.
Yeah.
So step away from that and actively become a creative person yourself, and you'll understand the struggle and the frustration of why you're not as good as your favorite artist or your favorite writer. You have to break away from that in order to do that. To answer your second question, do I use AI in any of my research? No.
Okay.
I as easy as that is, it's 90% wrong.
Okay.
So that's why I prefer the old tried and true method. I know I'm an old fart. Give me a break here. I prefer the tried and true method of actively going on their socials, or their websites, looking at past interviews, because it's there. It's actively available. And I know I'm going to find something that an AI can't pull from.
Yeah.
So that's just my creative process. If you use AI for your own podcast, if it helps speed up your process, I know other hosts have done that. Those that have disabilities that use AI to generate the content for their stuff. Honestly, that's amazing. Please do that. And it helps you create an amazing show. By all means, I think that's wonderful. For myself, I don't actively use it because I like my process and it has not swayed me in any way, shape, or form. It's created what I've created in the past 18 years. So I think it's helped me become a better researcher, interviewer, host, and hopefully person to speak with.
Just going back to your podcast quickly, I'm curious about, because a lot of the people that you probably interview, you already know their work or you're a fan of their work, presumably some of them at least. I'm curious how you sort of are able to kind of create that divide so that you kind of maintain enough distance to sort of still ask them challenging questions while still, remaining a fan of their work.
I'm sorry. I geek out constantly. There is no divide whatsoever. Oh no, if I love your work, I am going to dive into it a hardcore, and I will ask you all the questions I want to ask you. Whether I know about writing or art or social media, I am going to deep dive into it as much as I can. Whether it's your first time on the show or whether it's your 50th time on the show, I'm still going to provide that same excitement because I'm going to always learn something new. Because maybe it's been a year since you've been on the show. Maybe it's been 10 years since you were last on the show. And I had that recently with Phil Folio, who was my episode 10 guest on Two Geeks Talking way back when. Gosh, that was 18 years ago. And I had him back on last year. And it was wonderful to actually have a video conversation with him. And I was geeking out the entire time. I was just like, because you were on episode 10, you didn't have to be on the show as a guest. And I was rapid fiery just speaking out. And he's like, oh yeah, here's a crazy host. Okay, that's good, But no, he was a wonderful person to speak with. But I'm going to be excited because I want you to be excited about your work as well too. And if I don't show excitement, it's a boring conversation.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a boring conversation. At least. But you have days like that where you just don't have the energy, but you have to force yourself to do it because they're taking the time out of their day to be on your show. You better be up to snuff to ask them the questions you want to ask them and get them to speak about what they love doing, or else just reschedule, do it another day.
Okay, Kurt, final 2 questions. First, what are 3 podcasts you'd recommend?
Well, I'd recommend this one. Can I say that? Is that good?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. No, I've had a blast here, actually. It's been a wonderful conversation with you. So I would definitely recommend this one for sure. It is my favorite podcast. Insert whatever tagline here. I think another one would be, I think Tim Ferriss has an interesting interview style. If you want to dive deep into, deep dive into the process of being productive and being business minded. He doesn't do it for every guest, but he's pretty consistent in that respect. He was one of the very first podcasts I listened to way back when. And I think it really depends on what you like listening to and what your niche is. But I just think it's not a podcast, but I think Gary Vaynerchuk's just his YouTube channel, his shorts, his content, just his message overall about becoming a better person and becoming a better business person and always striving to become proficient in what you're passionate about, I think is just a really good, solid message to kind of get your day going, even though he is a Jets fan. So go figure.
That can be forgiven. Okay.
Yeah, I guess.
Where can people find you online?
So you can find Two Geeks Talking on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. You can find our podcast by searching Two Geeks Talking. That's TWO Geeks Talking, wherever you get your podcasts, or twogeekstalking.podbean.com. You can search for me on social media at Kurt Sasso, Kurt Sasso, Sasso, or at Two Geeks Talking. I'm on every single platform imaginable. And if I'm not, just message me and I'll jump on there, whatever the case may be. And the website is going through a complete overhaul, so you can find older content on that. I don't know if it's broken or not, but it is www.tgtmedia.com. And I really appreciate you, Sebastian, for having me on the show. It's been a real amazing time here.
Terrific. Thank you. And it's been a privilege as well to speak with someone that's been in the game for so long. So thanks again for coming on the show, Kurt.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Talk That Pod. Make sure to follow us on all the social places. Just search for Talk That Pod. And if you're not subscribed yet, this podcast is also available on YouTube at Talk That Pod Show. Also, if you liked what you heard, tell your friends about it. And if you really liked it, give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And if you're a podcaster who wants to come on the show, go to talkthatpod.net and submit a request. Finding great podcasts is hard. That's why you should also check out Find That Pod. It's a podcast recommendation newsletter I write every week, bringing you 5 amazing new podcasts you should listen to. Subscribe today at findthatpod.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.